This is the only place you'll find a preseason top 25 rankings for the 2024-25 Michigan high school hockey season, and I'm going to unveil it in just a few moments. As a reminder, over the last 5 episodes of the podcast, I've presented conference previews for all 13 conferences around the state, talked at length about as many as 104 of the 130 programs in the state, mentioned more than 248 active and alumni as well. 248 active players and alumni as well. It's all out there, available on the website, pdspicks.com, as well as here on YouTube if you're watching, and then Apple and Spotify if you're listening on those platforms as well. So be sure to go back and check those episodes out. A ton of great info, tons of analysis to get you ready for the upcoming season before puck drop, which we'll have scrimmages this week. We'll have full-on games next week, so you're going to want to be prepared and know who's who and who's where and what to look out for this season. So be sure to go back and check out those episodes if you haven't already. Now, let's talk some hockey. So last season, I debuted the first and only preseason top 25 prior to the start of the hockey season. The inaugural ranking appropriately had your eventual Division I champion, Detroit Catholic Central, ranked number 1 overall. That went unchanged throughout the season and will likely be the case yet again this season. Eventual Division II champion, Byron Center, debuted at number 13. And Cranbrook, your Division III champ, was unranked this time last year. So anything can happen. I'm not sure they ever cracked my top 25, as a matter of fact, at any point last season. So obviously take this with a grain of salt, but let's have some fun with it too, right? Okay. So I'm going to unveil my top 25 in groups. These groups, I feel like you could swap these teams throughout. If I have them at 19 and you feel another team could from 24 could be up in that spot, or vice versa, I think there's a lot of interchangeable pieces within these tiers themselves. That's why I kind of have them chunked out the way that I do. Those tiers, as we work our way up the top 25, are teams on the rise, challengers, in the hunt, title contenders, and the last one, of course, Detroit Catholic Central. So I'll leave that up to the imagination as far as what team or teams are in that group. On top of that, I'll also go team by team, doing a little over-under. We'll have some fun projecting teams' win totals year over year for the 24-25 season. Before we get to number 25, I'll briefly make mention of a few teams kind of on the bubble of that preseason top 25. In like I said, kind of going back to some of those flip-flopping, swapping one team out for another. Feel free to play that game if you'd like. I'd like to just kind of establish a bit of a baseline for us to work from. And if you want to have some fun with these honorable mentions and state your case why you think they might be deserved of a slot in this first tier, by all means, connect with me on social media and have at it. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Wherever you want to talk hockey, let's go. So in no particular order, you got Hancock, Forest Hill Central, Bay City, Grand Rapids Christian, Northville, Calumet, Sparta, White Lake, Lakeland, Bay Reps, and Chelsea, all kind of on that fringe for me, knocking on the door of the preseason top 25. Some big news out of Forest Hill Central, too. I'm getting reports that the junior 2007-born prospect Ben Mielak has actually returned to the Rangers for the upcoming season. He had been with the Jersey Hitmen of the NCDC since September, appeared in 6 games for them, I believe had 2 assists at the junior level, has opted to return to high school hockey for 1 more year. I think that's a good move. I think that also makes the Rangers a real scary team there on the west side during a year that, you've heard me talk about in these conference previews. I don't know that one particular team on the West Side looks overly dominant in that OKC. So it's up for grabs, and when Forest Hills gets a piece like that back in Milok, that can make them really push them over the top. So Grand Rapids Christian with Josh Hooper and Brody Basor, Sparta. I talked about them at length on the last episode of the pod when I was talking about potential standout independent teams. Lakeland's got a nice duo in Scanlon and Dole. Chelsea, obviously, with Luke Webster in net. All these teams I have kind of on the fringe have a real nice prospect in the lineup or an offensive duo to watch. And really, like I said, if you slotted in a team like Northville in place of a team or teams that I have in my first tier, I probably won't fight you too hard on it. But all these teams on the fringe, I think, are really close. So, all right, without further ado here, I think I'm good to go if I just click this. I'm hesitant to. Let's see if this works. There we go. All right, first tier. On the rise, you got M1 United, Alpena, Midland Dow, Cranbrook, Salem, and Granville rounding out that first tier. If you're watching on YouTube, obviously you can see this displayed on the screen. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, I'll do my best to articulate and paint a word picture for you of how these rankings are unfolding. But also, I don't believe it's published at the time of recording. But when the podcast is live, when the blog is live, I will include a link to the blog as well in the description below. So then that way you can follow along that way too. So, okay, teams on the rise. Like I mentioned, M1 United, Alpena, Dow, Cranbrook, Salem, Granville. I'll go one by one here. M1 United. I'm not going to get too granular in breakdowns of the teams. I've spent quite a bit of time on all of these teams, I think, in those preseason previews. But nonetheless, M1 United won 17 games last season. They bring back some key contributors, one of them obviously being Charlie Price. And hearing a lot of rumblings about just his junior hockey potential and being able to play on at the next level. Maybe a little bit surprising on the surface because he doesn't strike you as the prettiest or flashiest or toe drag and dipsy do type of player. But what projects him well to the next level is just his grittiness and just his hard-nosed compete level. When you put him on the ice, you know what you're going to get. And so I think that skill set, having that tool in your repertoire, really projects well to the next level. Not to be a prolific power play goal scorer type, but to be a third, fourth line penalty killing, grind them out type. He could absolutely slot into a junior team and really flourish in a role like that, in a position where I think some other skill guys, those guys who expect to be on a power play or expect to be goal scorers at the next level, it's a struggle to kind of accept or play that kind of grinder, middle of the lineup type role. Price already kind of fits that style to a T and should help him slot into a position like that at the next level too. So kind of went off on a tangent, but that was something I didn't get to talk about in the previews before. I wanted to get that out there on Price in particular. 17 wins last season. Haven't quite the schedules are still kind of slowly getting published on the hub. So I haven't had a ton of time to really dive into specifics in terms of, oh, that's a win. Oh, that's a loss. Oh, that's a win type thing. But, I'm pretty high on M1 coming into the season, given the pieces they've got. I think they have a great year in conference. I could see them winning a ton of games in the regular season and even making a push and threatening for a regional championship at the end of the year as well. So 17 wins. I'm going to go over on that number. In particular for the Griffins. And let's see, how am I doing here? I probably need to speed it up a little bit here. Alpena, 17 wins a season ago, 24 wins 2 years ago. So this is a team, a program that habitually wins games and wins them in bulk. I think they contend again in conference, and it really comes down to, sorry, I'm blanking on names in particular, but comes down to Alpena and Traverse City Central, and ultimately contending again. It's a young group, but a young, experienced group at that. So I could very easily see them going over that 17 win mark as well. Midland Dow. So I've got Midland Dow here. I got another team in the next group. I won't get too far ahead of myself. I might be drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit on Midland Dow. They had some really standout individual players in the fall. Nolan Harris being one of them that I talked about really grabbing my attention. Those guys, maybe I'm a little too high on them early on, but I'm buying the hype here, and maybe I'm early to put them into the top 25. But I think it's a team that could really end up in this spot come season's end. Only 9 wins a season ago, 4 wins 2 seasons ago. So it's a program that's kind of had some difficult times the last couple seasons. I think the tides turn with guys like Harris in the lineup. Midland Dow, I think, is going to be real strong. Midland, I think, is going to be real strong. I think that SVL as a whole is going to be a really strong league. So I think Dow easily goes over that 9 win mark. Might even hit that win total by President's Day at the rate I expect them to go. So like I said, this might be one of my, I'll say, longer shots, slotting them in here in the preseason top 25. But it's a team that I believe has some key cornerstone guys that can make a difference, that have experienced a lot, been in the program for a while, know what it takes, and now they're geared up and ready to win. Similar to Granville, I think that similar case there. As I've mentioned, I have not been shy at all about how strongly I feel about this Granville team, with a lot of the young returners they've got coming back, AAA guys they've got coming in. Granville is going to be a much scarier team this season than they were last season, with only 10 wins to their name. Granville goes way over that win total as well. I think could even threaten, not just on the regional level, but at the state level. This is a team very early on. I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but early indications, I think they could be a West Michigan representative at the state tournament as well, when the field gets down to those 8-4 teams late in the year. I think Granville could be in the mix very much. I'll double back here. I went from 23 to 20. I didn't forget about Cranbrook, didn't forget about Salem. Cranbrook, I've mentioned before on last week's MIHL preview. Cranbrook, to me, they still got some really nice pieces in place. I like Nick Timko a lot. Gianluca DeSalvo is there as well. Will Nodal was strong in the MDHL. So they've got some pieces there as well. Blake Tice in net. Cranbrook is going to be every bit as good as they were last season, I think. And that was a team that had a lot of ups and downs last season, but got it right at the right time. This is now, fast forward to this season, Cranbrook, I think, is a team who could come into the season in the right spot, in the right place, and really hit the ground running here in 24-25. 15 wins, I think that's a pretty good number for them this time. 15 wins last season, I think that's another good number this time around. Playing in the MIHL is going to be tough. You're going to go up against CC. You're going to go up against Rice and Orchard Lake, Trenton. I'd say all 4 of those teams would be favored head-to-head over a team like Cranbrook, but that's not to say they still can't get to that 15-win total. I'll take them to go over, but just by a slim margin, maybe 16 or 17 wins on the season. Remember, Cranbrook had to get to the Final Four. They had to get to the state final, I think, to reach 500 last season. To get to that 15-win total, they entered the playoffs with a losing record, and that playoff push actually ended up pushing them, tipping the scales there to a 15-13-1 record, I believe. Salem, 12 wins last season. I think they go over that as well. I've got everybody going over here. Wow, it's just wild. But Salem playing in, again, a uber tough KLAA division or KLAA conference. I think Stevenson is the team to beat in that KLAA East division. That's not to say Salem couldn't still scratch and claw their way to 13-plus wins. And again, this is a team that won the East Division last season, so we can't completely rule them out of being a conference contender in the KLAA either. So, okay, so that'll wrap things up there for teams on the rise. Let me get to the screen here. and we will get into our challengers group here. 19, you got Sault Ste. Marie, Riverview, Gabriel Richard, Midland, Lumen Christi, De La Salle, Byron Center, and Marquette round out my tier group of challengers. And if I can get back to my main screen here, I'll get back to my notes. Here we go. Sault Ste. Marie, 21 wins a season ago. That's their second consecutive 20-plus win season for the program. Been a big, I'll call it a turnaround there for the Sioux, and put together two monster years that I think seasons that have really put the program back on the map from a state perspective. Suffered some pretty big losses, though. You lose Cam Labadie in net. That's a big loss. He was a stud for them last season. In really 35, 40 save efforts, really gave his team a chance to win on a nightly basis. I believe they graduated both goalies from a season ago, so there's a bit of a question mark in there in net, but they still have some young guys coming back, some prospects I really like. Corson Pace, you've heard me talk about him a bunch. Cam Gagnon, I believe, is another one. They've got some really nice pieces. I think they're, again, contenders on the statewide scene. I just don't see them getting back to a 20-win total. So I think that streak of consecutive 20-win seasons might come to a halt here this winter. Riverview, Gabriel Richard, 17 wins a season ago. I mentioned on last week's episode, their strength of schedule takes a significant jump. Playing in the Metro League, obviously, is no easy shakes. But now that they've opted for independent status, they've got 25 games of just an absolute gauntlet. I don't know that this season is going to be measured, and this season's success is going to be measured in terms of wins and losses for the Pioneers. I think it's just about how well you can compete on a nightly basis with an extremely young team. I want to say there was 4 or 5 freshmen on the team a season ago, so expect to have them back, plus a bunch of sophomores that'll be juniors this year. It's going to be a young group there for Coach DeSanta, and I think they contend. I think they're a top 25 team out of the gate. I just don't see them getting back to that 17-win total just yet. Still might be a year or two away from being real state title contenders there. Midland. So you heard me talk about Midland Dow a little while ago. Midland, kind of in that same breath. Maybe I'm just a little, like I said, I'm very high on the SVL this season. And Midland in particular, one of those teams I think we all need to be paying attention to, as after Lucas Mankoff and Cade Sanborn just ripped up the MDHL this fall. Also, Cade Dowd gets added to the mix. He's a nice player that I like a lot. Adds another wrinkle to that offense, adds some more depth. I believe their goalie last season was a freshman, so he gets a little more experience under his belt. Steps in there, 14 wins. It's going to be tough to surpass that win total, but this is a program. The Chemics, I kind of been sleeping on them a little bit over the last couple of years after, digging and doing some research here. Last 3 seasons, 14 wins, 18 wins, 19 wins, their last 3 seasons. And then I think you get into the COVID shortened year after that. But not going to sleep on Coach Witt anymore here. Midland, I'm going to take them to get to teen wins, 14, 15, 16. I think they absolutely go over that 14 win total from a season ago, and real legitimate contenders there at the regional level. And then, you get past that and get onto the state tournament level, anything can happen. So, okay, I'll keep moving down. I'm at 16 right now with Lumen Christi, 20 wins a season ago. They bring back Zach Jacola in net. Fantastic senior goaltender, one of the best ones in the MDHL this fall. Real ace up your sleeve there for the Titans. Schedule is going to get a lot harder, I think, as they make the move to the Metro League in place of number 18, Riverview Gabriel Richard there. Lumen, I've mentioned it a couple times now. I think the move to the Metro is a great step for the program as a whole. I think this roster is in really good shape right now to compete right out of the gate. But 20 wins is pretty lofty. I don't know that you hit that mark with the uptick in strength of schedule difficulty. So I like Lumen Christie here at 16. I'm going to take them under on that win total, though. Going to be tough to get back to that number without a deep playoff run. And with Jacola in that, I guess there's always a chance. You hear me say it all the time. You got a goalie in high school hockey or in hockey in general. You got a goalie, you got a chance. So I'll keep moving here. De La Salle. There's a lot of question marks for me around De La Salle because I just haven't seen many pilot prospects in action this fall. And maybe you got some dual sport guys, some soccer players or football players, things like that. Gavin Zalkowski is back. You've heard me talk about him a couple times on the podcast. He's one who's been through the MIHL slate before. Should be a solid resource for them in net. Dylan Blackwood, another guy up front. They're going to have some talent in some pieces, but I think there's also going to be some new faces and new contributors too, replacing a lot of the senior leadership that they lost a season ago. I want to say that De La Salle's top 3 or top 4 leading scorers from a season ago were all seniors. So they definitely won't be back this winter. So 16 wins. I think it's going to be a little bit of tough sledding for the Pilots this season in the MIHL. You've heard me talk about some of these teams in conference, especially that I think are on the rise or have really started to separate themselves from that MIHL pack. And De La Salle, my mind could definitely be changed here in the first couple weeks, couple months of the season. But I think 16 wins is going to be tough to duplicate this time around. So I'm actually going to take the under there on the Pilots. All right, I'll get into where am I at? 14 here. Byron Center, your defending Division II state champion, and you heard me mention earlier on this episode, last season Byron Center checked in at number 13 on this list, and then went on to be your eventual state champion. So. Got him here at 14, 27 wins a season ago, 28 wins the year before that, 17 wins the year before that. It's going to be really tough, I think, for the Bulldogs to reach that 20-win plateau. I've talked about how I think this Bulldogs team is just going to be built a little different this season. They don't have the Freuslins of the world, the Nicholases or Cade Pratt. They're kind of big guns, they're heavy hitters. I don't see that on this particular roster. What I do see is a more consistent throughout. There isn't one particular line you're going to have to line match against or be aware of in a particular game, but there's a lot more consistency, I expect, between your first, second, and third line. So it'll be a constant pressure as opposed to that big gun you got to worry about, and then 2-3 big gun, that type of thing. Worrying about matchups on the bench, I don't think will be as much of a concern, but it's going to be more of a constant presence there for Byron Center offensively. But 27 wins, that's a lot for any program, and then factor in some of the losses BC experienced this offseason just by way of graduation. And a lot of prospects playing junior hockey. So I'm going to take the under on that win total. Byron Center could very much still be in the mix as the top team on the west side, as a top team in Division II. There's just a lot of unprovens at this point, and some questions that need to be answered. Still, absolutely a top 25 team in my mind, but some questions that need to be addressed before they move up or down here in the preseason top 25. Last one here in the challengers group, I got Marquette. 20 wins a season ago, 18 before that, 22 before that, 14 in the COVID shortened year, 24 and 21 wins. This is a program under Coach Doug Garrow that just flat out wins games. And it's not an easy schedule. It's not. Like, there's great teams in the UP that they play regularly. Hancock, Calumet, they run into all those guys. They had Houghton on the schedule while they were in conference, things like that. Marquette is another team that makes a habit out of coming downstate. Regulars at the MIHL showcase, the Chelsea showcase. They usually make a habit out of coming down the first weekend of the season. I think last season or the year before, they came down and played like Lake Orion and Rochester United on like November 17th or something like that. So this is a well-traveled program Coach Garrow does a fantastic job for everything from building the schedule to implementing systems and forechecks and getting guys to just buy into a system and play, bench management and playing all four lines and putting them in matchups where they can succeed. Uh, 20 wins on the surface, I'd be like, oh, there's no way. Like that's a huge number to kind of replicate. But then you look back and go, well, shit, they've hit that number 4 out of the last 5 seasons. Like, so I'll buy the hype, right? I will, sure, why not? Why can't they win 20 games again this season? If I got to go over or under 20 wins, I can't go a tie. I can't just take, yeah, they'll win 20 games again. No, I'll go over. I think they can sneak their way to 21 wins. You got Cole Kelly back in net. You got my guy Seth Sandstrom, Brody Sheldon. There's a ton of pieces to this lineup coming back from last season. Not to mention just the way this team plays, just a suffocating style of play. So I think 21 wins is absolutely attainable, which would get them over that 20 win total a season ago. But it will not be easy sledding. Here we go. All right, we'll move on to our next group here. We get into the teams in the hunt. Okay, this is probably the second smallest. I was going to say the smallest, but it's obviously not the smallest tier of the bunch. Teams in the hunt. These are teams, they are obviously cemented themselves as top 25 teams, just kind of on the fringe of being real legitimate title contenders, which would obviously be the next tier. If things break right for these teams, they're absolutely a state title contender. But there's also potential and concerns that it could break the other way for these teams too. And if some of those questions early on in the season don't get answered, these are obviously teams that could slip down the rankings as well. So without further ado here, let me get back to my notes. Where am I going here? There we go. Okay, so Trenton obviously 23 wins a season ago. Trenton kind of in that similar boat for me with Marquette, where again, face value, 23 wins. There's no way you could replicate that. But if you go back through even the last couple of years, the Trojans have been one of the winningest programs of the last 5 years. They've hit 20 plus wins. What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4 of the last 6 seasons. One of those outliers being the COVID shortened season, and then 18 wins the season after that. So this is a team that, even despite playing in the MIHL and playing against one of the tougher schedules in the state, they still find ways to win games. And this season in particular, you got Evan Seavey in net is always going to give you a chance every single night. I think that's a huge opportunity there for the Trojans. For a team that's going to be, I think, a little bit on the younger side too, but dangerous. These are young players, what is it? 07s, 08s, 09s even, that are skilled, really highly skilled young players that I think could come in for Trenton and make an impression right out of the gate. So 23 wins for the Trojans to go over that mark. You'd have to win a state title, and that's something Trenton hasn't done in quite a few years now. I think that's a bit of the narrative around the program, talking with to the kids at Plymouth last year at the Final Four, and coming up a little bit short there. That's kind of been the narrative is, we've history-wise, we've won a ton of state championships in this program, but it's been 10, 12 years now since they've won it last. So I think that's become a bit of a rallying cry for the program and getting back to Plymouth and coming out on the winning side of things. You've got a goalie, you've got a chance. But with this young squad in front, I think there's going to be some ups and downs that might not be in the original forecast. There's going to be some learning opportunities, some growing pains and things like that. So 23 wins, I'm actually going to take the under here on Trenton. I think that's a tough number to get back to after last season's state final run. Brighton, kind of in that same boat, 24 wins a season ago. They made a run to the state final to come up just short to Detroit Catholic Central. 24 wins with a very senior heavy group there. That group of that class of 2024 Brighton Bulldogs was one that had been with the program for several years and had really built up over the last couple of years, culminating with that playoff run last season. But as that class goes out, you get another class coming in, and you heard me talk about them at length on last week's episode with Tim Peterson, Caden O'Toole, Connor Duffney. Bulldogs are going to be in good hands for the next couple of years, but that's a young group. That's a bunch of 09s that could potentially be with the program for the next 2, 3, 4 years. So getting back to that 24 win total, I don't think that happens this season, but next season, the year after that, Bulldogs are absolutely right back in the mix as state title contenders. And truth be told, Tim Peterson comes hot out of the gate like I kind of expect him to. He looks to be a legitimate go-to guy already, even as a sophomore. If Connor Duffney and some of those guys can get up to speed, Mitch Wysocki, another one, if those guys can get up to speed and get up to speed in a hurry, maybe the Bulldogs can make a push for a 20-win season. But nonetheless, 24 wins. I've got them right now as the third best team in the KLAA West behind Heartland and Howell. I don't think you can be third in the division and still get to that 24-win mark, so I'm going to take the under here on the Bulldogs. Okay, Brother Rice here checks in at number 10. Brother Rice, 15 wins a season ago. Maybe considered a bit of a down year after being a perennial state title contender for the last 4, 5, 6 years prior to that, to then come up short on the regional level and unfortunately not come away with any hardware last season. I think there's probably a bit of a sour taste in the Warriors' mouths this time around. Still got some studs to be aware of. Cam George, Roman Valaire, super high on those guys coming into the season. They've had really strong fall seasons to get them prepped for the regular season. I saw the roster get unveiled. I get them mixed up. There's Nick and Christian Hadji. I think it's Nick. Nick is the younger one, right? Right? He's got it. Saw him back on the roster. Brendan Beath, another one. Like, there's still some really nice Jude Manley and that. There's still some really nice pieces on the roster there for Brother Rice. Not to mention some of the new incoming guys you're going to add to the mix as well. So Rice, I got them at 10 here. Could very easily slot themselves into a top 5 spot here in short order, given that MIHL schedule and just the difficulty. The difficulty of the strength of schedule that they're going to face on a nightly basis. 15 wins. I don't know. I don't know if Rice can surpass that 15 win total from a season ago. There's a lot of question marks around this team. Do they have the talent? I think they can. There's a lot of good returners that I mentioned, but I think some of those newcomers that get added to the mix are going to be asked to fill a pretty large role. Can you step up in your first varsity game and start producing immediately? I think that's what the Warriors need this season, is some guys to come in and take the reins and be immediate contributors to pair with guys like George and Beath and Hadji and who am I missing there? Valaire, right? Like, they need some of these first-year guys to come in and make some big impacts out of the gate if the Warriors are going to kind of get back to that state title level contender, which I think they can, and I all but expect them to. So 15 wins. I'll be optimistic. I'm going to take them to go over that win total. Again, in that Division II scene, very much contenders. They make a playoff run, they'll smash that 15 win total. But like I said, last year, just a little bit leery, a little gun shy of that win total. So okay, we'll round out our teams in the hunt here with East Grand Rapids, 24 wins a season ago. Fantastic job done by Chris Newton with the Pioneers here. They've really cemented themselves as blue bloods in Michigan high school hockey. And what excites me the most about the Pioneers this time around is they graduated a lot last year. They lost a ton of significant contributors. And lost their top defenseman as well this offseason. So there's a lot of holes to replace. But then you got guys like Oliver Owen stepping up, James Albers stepping up, Brady Ross stepping up. You're creating that bit of a reload cycle, right? You're losing top guys, but you're replacing them with another crop of top guys. That to me is kind of your definition of blue bloods in high school hockey, and that's how you get that consistency at the top level. Is one, coaching that's there, that's committed, that just does the right things, gets his guys in the right spots, like the MDHL, like MHA, like Team Michigan, pushing guys onto those programs outside of the season is a huge component of that. You know, you can't just wash your hands in March and say, all right, boys, see you in November, and whoever shows up, shows up. This is 12 months out of the year. This is 365, man. And there's a handful of coaches that eat, sleep, breathe it around the clock. And you see it as evidenced by typically your top 25 standings. Those flashes in the pan come and go year over year, but teams that cement themselves in that top 25 scene year over year over year, that to me is makes you a blue blood, or puts you in that elite tier. And I think East Grand Rapids is absolutely in that mix after back-to-back runs to Plymouth. So 24 wins a season ago. I don't know if you get back to that mark. As much as I like those top guys for East Grand Rapids, that's a big number to hit in a season where it feels like the OKC could be a bit of a muddled mess in terms of who beat who and who and who and who. This team beat that team, but that team beat this team, and this team beat that team. It's going to be a very weird transitive property over there. I think I don't see one particular team really separating themselves from the pack like East Grand Rapids and Byron Center had done for much of the last 2 or 3 seasons. So I'm going to take the under on that 24 win total from a season ago. Okay, I'll get back to my rankings here. We'll move to legitimate title contenders in the state in our preseason top 25 as we head into game action next week. Number 8, sorry, I'm all over the screen here. Here we go. Number 8, I got Flint Powers, Howell, Stevenson, Houghton, Clarkston, Heartland, and Orchard Lake there at number 2. This is pretty competitive, pretty deep. You're really starting to separate the men from the boys, I think, here with this group. Flint Powers, studs. Howell, studs. Stevenson, I mean, you can go down the list and start rattling off guys from all 2, 4, 6, 7 of these teams that have legitimate junior hockey caliber players, college hockey caliber players on their rosters. Aiden Cook, you've heard me talk about him a bunch this fall. He's had an amazing run with MHA Red. Still just a junior, too. Could end up being one of the best players in the state as an underclassman still. Is an underclassman if you're a junior? I always thought it was. I thought seniors were your only, like, upperclassmen nonetheless. But regardless, junior Aiden Cook coming in hot this season. He's going to have some pieces around him, too. Flint Powers, a title contender yet again on the Division III circuit. 19 wins a season ago, 23 wins before that, 21 wins after that. I think they get to that 20-win plateau for the 3rd time in 4 seasons. Absolutely taking the over on that win total. That leads me into Howell here at number 7. Howell is another team super high on, especially considering goalie Henry Lansky getting added to the mix. You've heard me talk about just how dominant he's been this fall. And then they got a ton of returners, and not just returners that have been with the program and understand the system and know what coach is asking. These were major contributors last year and for 2 years, like a guy like Marco Wolf and Chad Patilla. Chad Patilla is a junior defenseman who's been a top 4 guy for the Highlanders for 2 years already. And he's still got 2 more years to go. Like, that's a huge advantage there on the back end. And then you factor in guys like Ben Hootery and Rory Sturos and things like that, guys who have been with the program for a long time. Things have kind of been building for Howell the last couple seasons and leading up to this winter. For first-year coach Keith Robertson, I think the Highlanders are in a really good spot here. 18 wins a season ago. It would take a deep playoff run, I think, to eclipse that 18-win mark, but I think they do it. I think they surpass 18 wins. They might even get to 20 if they can get to a an appearance in Plymouth. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Obviously, it's November 5th, and I'm talking about March 5th. But this team is built and has the pieces to be a state title contender and be in Plymouth come season's end. But you still got to do the work. You still got to put in. It's still nobody wins a state title in November, but you can damn sure lose it. So take care of business, do what you got to do, and build your resume throughout the season to put you in a place where I think you can be come season's end. So Stevenson, another KLAA team, super young last season. You've heard me talk about that a bunch as well. One senior on the roster last season, just wild to me. And they still managed to win 15 games and win a regional championship. Stevenson, it's going to be a bit of a logjam here in Metro Detroit, especially considering the KLAA and all those top teams. Is everybody going to be able to eat? Is everybody going to be able to get to 20 wins? Is everybody going to be able to be state title contenders? No. So some of these aren't going to go the way I want them to or expect them to. Stevenson, 15 wins a season ago, though. That was their lowest win total of the decade. Really, I guess you could look at of the last 6 seasons. 15 wins is the lowest, with the exception of the COVID shortened year, which was kind of a tricky one for everyone. So I kind of just rule that out. 19 wins, 20 wins, 25 wins, 21 wins. This is one of the winningest programs of the last 6, 7, 10 years in Michigan high school hockey. I think that trend continues. I think they go over that 15 win total. I think they win the KLAA East. I think they win a regional championship. I think they get to 20 wins in high school hockey this season, with some really promising prospects: Owen Hall, Colin Strobel, Connor Buchanan. There's some guys that are going to be playing on after high school hockey if all goes according to plan and they do what they need to do and handle their business. There's plenty of talent on this team, and guys who could be playing junior hockey, could be playing college, ACHA or in NCAA Division III type stuff. There's a lot of talent on that roster to work with. So I'm going to take the over on 15 wins and go way over and maybe even put them at about 20 wins this season. Houghton. Okay, Houghton at number 5. 24 wins a season ago. That was their third 20-win season in 4 years for the Gremlins there. Micah Stipich, first year behind the bench, wins 24 games. I think they match. I shouldn't say match. They hit that 20-win plateau for the 4th time in 5 seasons and the 2nd time under Coach Stipich. I do think they get back to 20 wins, but 24 is probably a little lofty there. They make the move to independent this season, so the strength of schedule might get a little bit more difficult. There's a little more freedom there, but with that freedom comes a lot more difficult matchups. So 24 wins is probably going to be hard to replicate. So I'm going to take the under, but just by a little bit. 22, 23 wins on the season, maybe. And again, one of your favorites to win Division III state championship too. They're going to be in the mix yet again this season. Again, I was talking about East Grand Rapids, just kind of graduating top talent and reloading with another wave of top talent. That's exactly what's going on with Houghton. That's exactly why Houghton is one of those blue bloods of high school hockey. So 24 wins, just a little too rich for my liking. I'm going to take the under on that win total. That leads us into Clarkston here at number 4. 22 wins a season ago. That was the 2nd year in a row they hit 22 wins. Can they hit 22 for this 3rd straight year? I think they can, actually. And I'm going to tell you why. They are the runaway favorite there in the OAA. They're going to pile up a lot of wins in conference. And I think that builds a sense of confidence in going out there on a nightly basis and playing. And that confidence then snowballs into your non-conference games when you do play a team like Brighton and you do play a team like Heartland. And you do play some of these top 5, top 25 matchups that Clarkston finds themselves in. It's going to be a confident bunch because it's a lot of guys who have been with the program for a year, 2 years, 3 years now that have won a lot of games. So even after graduating Owen Croston and Evan Adams, and even after losing Ronnie Wade, who's playing junior hockey at the moment, they lost, arguably their 3 best players from a season ago. They're reloading with another wave of top guys. Kyle Lynch, I thought was a top guy for him last year, and very much in the mix with those top guys I just mentioned from a season ago. It could really be the Lynch show this season for Clarkston, and not to mention you still got the Brady, you got the Damian brothers, Brady and Trey. So there's two big assets to work with, and I heard a ton of great reviews about Anderson. I'm blanking on his first name at the moment. I don't have super great notes in front of me, but the narrative on him was Gavin Anderson. There we go. Finally came to me. Timely scoring, right? Whenever you needed a big goal, he was the one who kind of came up in the clutch for you. I could see him stepping into a larger role this winter to help replace or supplement some of that scoring lost from a season ago. So Clarkson's very much going to be in good hands again. 22 wins. I think they do match that for a third time in a row. Their third consecutive, potentially third consecutive 22 win season there under Coach Breyer. I think they can get back to that. I think they could make a run and get back to Plymouth if all things break right for them, which would be, I think, their second trip in a row. Anyways, I got to stop talking about things I don't have notes on. That's my problem. I start ranting and get it going off on a tangent. But nonetheless, Clarkston, a team very much deserving of being in the top 5 of high school hockey, and then obviously a top contender come playoff time as well. That leads me into 2 teams in particular here that, if anyone can compete with Detroit Catholic Central, I think it comes down to these 2 teams here at number 2 and at number 3 with Heartland and with Orchard Lake. The way these 2 teams are built, the way these 2 teams are coached and structured and just play the game, I think gives them the best chance amongst the field at competing with a team like Detroit Catholic Central. And not necessarily at the state level or come the state tournament, but even regular season. Orchard Lake will play a league game against Detroit Catholic Central. Heartland, I believe, plays Catholic Central early on this season. I'd have to double check the schedule, but I know they've got CC on the schedule as well. So they're going to get a crack at the champ. They're going to get a shot, and I think they are built in a way to compete, but ultimately you got to take care of business too. Heartland has some high-end talent throughout the lineup at forward with Ian Castamo, on defense with Ty Crow. You've got other pieces there. Brady Snyder, you've heard me talk about him. Luca DeGirolamo, I haven't even really talked about him this fall yet because I've been so high on some of the other guys from Heartland. Like, the Eagles are going to have a very talented roster and a very deep roster, which is what I think ultimately leads them or gives them a chance against a team like CC. Orchard Lake, similar but a little bit different. They've got I've mentioned him, Will Keene, maybe one of the best goalie prospects we've had in Michigan high school hockey in some time, just because of his intangibles, and he's got features to his game that you just can't coach. Right? He's 6'5". He's a giant in net, and he's athletic. He's not just big and bulky. He can move. He's good laterally. He comes out and challenges shooters and takes up a lot of space. He's built in a way not many goalies at this level are, which sets him up nicely for success. You have him in net, and then Orchard Lake. I think this team is going to be super deep. I comped them last week on the MIHL preview. I comped them last week to Marquette, and just 4 lines of deep and just open the door and roll out lines. And it's another wave and another wave and another wave of aggressive, fast, forechecking, in-your-face pressure that can make it difficult to play against. So I don't know that Orchard Lake has the high-end players that I think Heartland does, but what the Eaglets do have is just that constant depth throughout your entire lineup. The gap between your top defenseman and your 6th defenseman is pretty marginal. The gap between your number 1 center and your number 4 center is pretty minimal. You're going to have 4 lines that you can trust on the ice at all times, and 3 sets of D on the ice at all times that you can trust. So that depth, I think, really sets you up, puts you in a position where you can contend with a team like Detroit Catholic Central, which leads me to my final tier and your number one team from the preseason top 25 heading into the 24-25 Michigan high school hockey season. None other than Detroit Catholic Central. So I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record because you're the top guy until you're not the top guy. Until somebody else can prove otherwise. This spot is Catholic Central's, basically until Catholic Central says otherwise. This team graduated, you heard me talk about it quite a bit in the MIHL preview, just the sheer losses that this program endured this offseason, essentially by way of graduation, losing 17 guys, one of them being their leading scorer, Brooks Rogowski, who's playing junior hockey now in the OHL. That's not a big surprise for a program like Catholic Central that habitually graduates 10, 11, 15, 17 guys on a year-to-year basis. No team reloads or restocks the way that Catholic Central does. So again, 29 wins a season ago, 29 wins the season before that, 26 wins the season before that. This is your winningest program in Michigan high school hockey over the last 6-7 seasons now. Nobody has won more games than the Shamrocks. I think that trend's going to continue this season. They haven't lost a game in state in over 2 years. I don't know. Like I said, I think Heartland and Orchard Lake can contend, but for them to beat Catholic Central, I need to see it to believe it at this point. So 29 wins, though. They play it. They're going to load up with a bunch of tough out-of-state opponents. They've gone into Ontario and played like St. Michael's. They've gone down south and played like Culver and some teams like that. So I'm sure they'll pull in some difficult out-of-state opponents as well, which always adds a bit of a wild card. So I don't see them getting back to that 29 win total. I'll take the under on that, but I still don't see anybody in state beating them. So for them to lose or for them to not hit that 29 win mark, it's going to be because an out-of-state kind of outlier team beats the Shamrocks, not necessarily because one of our own, so to speak, knocks them off. So. And I did just kind of blank. I never gave over-unders for Heartland and Orchard Lake, so let me backpedal a little bit. Heartland was a 20-win team a season ago. That was their fourth 20-win season in the last 6 years. 20 wins. I'm going to take the over on that one. That's a lot of overs on these top 25 win totals. So everybody's winning games, I think, is what it comes down to. But I'm going to take the over on that 20 wins. Heartland is a team I think can make a push to get back to Plymouth after not winning a regional championship a season ago, actually, at the hands of Clarkston. So, okay. So Heartland, I'll take the over on 20 wins. Orchard Lake, 17 wins a season ago. That was their third straight season of 16 or more wins. I think they go over that as well. Orchard Lake, I think, for the foreseeable future, I think it's going to be Detroit Catholic Central, Orchard Lake 1 and 2. My mind could be changed obviously early on, but I was hesitant on Orchard Lake last season. I was one of the lower ones looking at, my hockey rankings, MPR, state champs, all kind of had Orchard Lake St. Mary's in the top 5, in the top 3, in the top 2 for much of last season. And I was kind of holding back on them a little bit for reasons I can't really recall or can't really justify now, but I typically had them around 6, 7, 8. Of those outlets, I was for sure the lowest of the bunch. And I think I'm just starting to come around on the Eaglets and Coach Clanow there and just really appreciating what Orchard Lake's got going on this time around after seeing a bunch of them in action this fall. So I'm all in on Orchard Lake too. 17 wins. I think they go over that. I think this is a 20-plus win team. But it's tough. Winning 20 games in high school hockey is no easy feat. I know I talked about it and threw around that number a bunch as we talked about teams here, but that's no easy feat. So So 20 wins, I think they can get back to that, but that's tough sledding. That's tough to do. So okay, we'll wrap things up here. Your preseason top 25 rankings ahead of the 24-25 Michigan high school hockey season. The only place you'll find such rankings right here on PD's Picks. Got a whole bunch of other great content coming your way all season long. So be sure to subscribe if you're watching here on YouTube and follow on Apple and Spotify. Leave a review while you're at it too. That'd be great. Next week, biggest episode of the year. And every year, I question whether I'm going to do it or not. But I hear it from you guys all the time. So if you want it, I'll deliver. Next week, I'll release my top 100 names to know for the upcoming season, just as games are starting to get underway. So a little teaser, 53 lefties on the list. That means there's 47 righties, obviously. 63 forwards, 24 defensemen, 13 goalies. That might be the most goalies I've ever had in my top 100. 64 seniors, 32 juniors, 4 sophomores made the list as well. You got 24 06s, 56 2007 born prospects, 18 08s, and yeah, two 2009s made the list as well. In total, you got 59 different programs represented across the state. So if you want to take a stab at who's going number one, be sure to connect with me on social media and let me know who you think is the number one player on my top 100 names to know. And who knows? Maybe these numbers could change between now and then. Maybe I could be persuaded to change the list up a little bit. Who knows? But until then, skate hard, have fun. I'll see you guys at the rink soon.